Hi, Mr. Johnson here, and we are talking about our Drawing with Shapes art project prompt. So we're going to talk about how to start drawing using basic shapes as a foundation. I'll show you some examples, a video tutorial, and then you'll practice it. So come along with me. Here's a video I found on the internet about simplifying drawings by starting with basic shapes. And this is great because I don't have to make it, because this guy already did. So let's take a look.
In this video, I'm going to share a very basic but very important way that you can simplify your subject to have success in your drawings. Let's start with a very basic subject here, a pencil sharpener. Now, many of us look at this simple object and can't help but see all the details, and it's quite overwhelming. Okay. But what we're going to do is we're going to break it down into simple shapes, and then we'll add the details. So our finished drawing with details will be first broken down into basic, simple shapes. Then we'll add the details.
So I'm going to pause this real quickly. This is a technique you can use to draw anything, right? So if you're looking at an object, if you can try and see it as an arrangement of squares, rectangles, ovals, and triangles, drawing those, then you can go back in and start adding the details. So let's watch them do it.
And when we think of this object in this way, we really see that it is a simple object. It's just basically a wedge shape. So that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with a rectangle, and then we're going to make it a three-dimensional rectangle that's tapered just a bit on the right side. Very simple, very easy. In these early stages, we're just trying to get the length of the line correct so that the overall form is as close to accurate as possible. Then, using that basic form, we'll start to carve out some of the more intricate details of the form. In this case, the top part or the sides of the pencil sharpener have a little bit of an indentation. So we'll just use our form that we've drawn as a guide and basically cut those lines out. Now, we're continuing to look at the object that we're drawing. We're just breaking down the information that we're seeing into bite-sized, digestible chunks so that we're not overwhelmed with all the details that we see. Once we have the overall form of the object defined, then we can start to concentrate on some of the details that we see. We can also improve the line quality by making some of the lines a bit thicker and some of the lines leaving a bit thinner. This will add the illusion of form.
He's speeding this way up.
Even though we're adding details and a bit of shading here, we're still taking the drawing in bite-sized chunks. We're not getting overwhelmed by all the details. We're just adding each detail individually, one at a time, by looking at the basic shapes that they form. We're also making comparisons between different values that exist, trying to make the darks and lights as close to accurate as possible.
It's coming to life.
You see, this can be applied to any drawing that you create. It doesn't matter how complex it is. As long as you're able to break it down into chunks, you can get through it and you can be accurate with the marks that you create.
Boom.
Now you might be thinking, well, that's simple enough for a pencil sharpener, but how do I draw something that's more complex? The approach is still the same. Let's take a look at this bird. We're just going to look at basic shapes. We're not going to get overwhelmed with all of the details. And when we see those basic shapes, we can draw those basic shapes at the beginning stages of the drawing.
So I'm going to pause this again because what he's done on the screen is something that I think is so helpful. So taking your subject, whatever it is, and trying to see where there are ovals and rectangles and triangles that make up that subject. You can use this for anything, whether it's a single object, an entire scene. If you have a photograph reference that you don't mind drawing on, you can literally draw these shapes right over it and then transfer that onto your paper, try to copy those shapes, or just try and imagine those shapes on the subject in your head and then go in and try and
The
draw
beginning
them.
stages of a drawing are the most important stages of the drawing. Once we learn to find those shapes in the subjects that we're drawing, we can create highly detailed drawings because we have a structure in place.
Yes.
So let's look at the process with the bird. We'll start with the shape of the head, which is basically an oval.
Right.
Notice I'm drawing several lines to draw the oval. It's a good idea to be loose with your marks, especially in the early stages of the drawing. The bill comes out and creates somewhat of a triangle, and I'm going to define the form a little bit more than I would with just a triangle. The neck is simply a rectangular shape that comes down from the oval. Now, as I'm drawing these shapes, I'm also thinking about the relationship of negative space that happens around the overall shape of the bird. I'm making comparisons as I go with the photo reference to make sure that the shapes I'm creating are accurate and proportional.
So when he's talking about making the shapes accurate and proportional, we know that the body is an oval, right? The head is a circle and the neck is a rectangle. That's great. But you also want to make sure that that oval is the right size in relation to the rest of the drawing. So when you look at your photo reference, right, is the body much longer than the neck, right? Is it twice as long as the neck, 1.5 times as long as the neck? How wide is it? Is it two necks wide? Is it wider than that? And making those judgments between parts of your drawing will really help you determine if your objects are drawn to
The
scale.
body, of course, is just an oval. Notice it's slightly diagonal.
It is.
And there's several groupings of feathers coming off, but I'm only going to worry about the main section here to begin with. I'll add the other parts when I start to add the details. For the legs,
Good
we're
job.
just going to draw simple lines, concentrating only on where the leg bends or turns and changes direction. Of course, the length of the line is important as well, so we're making comparisons to the length of the body. Now,
Yep.
we'll also draw shapes for the webbed feet. The second leg simply drops straight down, and of course we'll draw a shape for that foot as well. But notice how it ends higher up on the picture plane. This will create the illusion of space in the image, and it's what is observed in the photo reference. Now that we've got our basic shapes in place, we'll go back to those extra feathers that are sticking out on the end of the bird and add shapes for those as well. Again, as much as we can, we're going to simplify everything that we see in this early stage. And then once we've got the basic form of our object or our subject in place, now we can concentrate on the details. We can focus on the contour lines and defining that line, that edge, even further. We can
Oh,
focus on the textures that are observed, the values, all of the details that seem to be overwhelming at the beginning stages of the drawing, but shouldn't be. In the early stages of the drawing, we should be concentrating only on the basic shapes that we see. Learning how to see these basic shapes is fundamental to learning how to draw. Once you learn how to see objects as basic shapes, then you can draw anything that you want. It's just a process of breaking down complex objects into simple and easy to draw shapes. Adding all those details like the texture, the range of value, that becomes a whole lot easier when you've got accurate shapes in place right from the start.
yep.
So ultimately, it's a process of simplification, finding simple geometric shapes in the complex objects that you draw, and piecing those shapes together. If you focus on the details right from the start, you'll find that drawing can be frustrating and very difficult. But if you
True.
learn to simplify objects into basic shapes right from the start, you'll find that drawing is rather easy. I hope that this demonstration has helped you out, and I hope that you can apply these tips to your own drawings.
We can.
If you
So,
enjoyed this,
I'm going to shrink myself here because I have a whole page. Woo! Example. But right, that video was a fantastic example of how you can draw absolutely anything by first using just very simple shapes and adding the details later. This is how I draw pretty much everything. So trust me, it works. I've been drawing this way for 20 years. So here's just a step-by-step example that you can see on the screen. If you want to draw this flamingo, you might say, well, that's difficult to draw, but here you can see that the artist has broken it down into basic shapes: triangle, oval, rectangles. That's really it. And then they've drawn those basic shapes on their paper, saying, okay, here's my skeleton, right, for this drawing. And then you can refine those shapes and start adding in the details and smoothing them out, and you can get the finished drawing of the flamingo that's on the right. So you can use this technique to draw anything that you want. So here's an example out of a drawing book where you're using basic shapes to draw this pear and these two apples with a leaf. So the photo of them is right here, but see how the artist started just with a triangle shape for the pear and circles for the apples. Now the pear could be a triangle, it could be a small circle on top, a bigger circle on bottom. There are a lot of ways that you can set these up. All of them are great. It's whatever works best for you. So if you see on the bottom, they've started just with those shapes. Then they erased out the lines that they don't want and refined the shapes. Then they started adding shading and details. Now, what if you were to draw a more complex subject like a pineapple? Well, I'm glad you asked, because it's right on the screen. So again, here they've started with just a basic shape. It's kind of an oval rectangle hybrid. I don't know, a rectoval? Rectoval? Ovangle? Rectoval. That's definitely a rectoval. So they've started with their rectoval shape here and then curved, right, those edges, added just little points, right, for those leaves at the top. Then they've gone back in and started adding all of the detail. Even for the little slice of pineapple, right, it's a rectangle and a triangle. That's all it is. And then they start rounding it out and adding all those details. So you can end up with a drawing like this pineapple, but you can start with a simple rectoval. It's going to be my word of the week now. If you're drawing a hand, that's a really complex, very difficult to draw. Try to break it down into basic shapes. So here, the artist has noticed that the wrist and the palm are basically rectangles. So the palm is a rectangle that's slightly uneven, which is what they've drawn here. And then the wrist, just these lines that come down. Then the thumb, right, is an oval here with another little oval. That's an oval here for this part of the thumb. Then another oval up here. For the fingers, they've drawn this blocked in the whole shape of them, right, with a little V separating the fingers there. And then they start adding the detail and erasing the lines that they don't need. So again, start with just real simple shapes. If you look at a hand and say, oh, that's really complex, only look at this part, right? What shape is that? Then look at the thumb, what shape is that? And then the fingers together, what shape is that? This way, you can draw anything. So here is what I would like you to do for this assignment. You're going to create 5 drawings of 5 different things that all start as an arrangement of shapes. So here are the 5 things I would like you to draw. The first one is your hand in some kind of bent or twisted position. And that's because the flat hand is already done for you on the screen. So use this as a reference, but if you're going to bend the fingers, look at what does this shape look like. If you're going to turn the hand, what does this shape look like? If you're going to do this, look at what do those shapes look like, okay? Then you're going to choose something from nature, right? Anything that grows is fine. The third one, an interesting object. Anything that you have that has a neat shape, whether it's a desk lamp, like in the example here, or a toy or a backpack or an electronic, anything. The fourth one, draw an animal, any kind of animal. And the last one, any kind of food. So here's what you're going to do. Draw each step in your sketchbook and include the finished drawing like you see on the screen. Now, you don't have to label every step like they've done. This is used as an instructional guide. But I want to see the basic shapes that you're choosing and the finished drawing. Make sure that you use a reference for each drawing. That's so important. Don't just make up your subject. If you're drawing a cat for your animal, don't just make up a cat, right? Either get a cat, don't steal a cat, but if you have a cat or have access to a cat, look at that cat. If not, Google a cat and just find a photo and use that as a reference. Start with the basic shapes and add detail last. So for your projects, right, you should be posting an in process image so that I can give you feedback before the final drawings are done. So for this, your in process image could be the basic shapes, and then I can give you any pointers if we have to adjust them at all before you end up with the final drawing. Or you could do one right start to finish, and then I can give you some tips on that. So however that's going to work best for you. If you have any questions about the project, please let me know. I can't wait to see what you draw. Good luck.